Hi, this is Di from Munro and Eydie Rescue, also Newborough Pups. Today is Canada Day, and it's a sad Canada Day. I find this difficult to talk about because I really don't know how to start this. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had a spiritual affinity for Aboriginal people. Partly, I think, because my mom looked like an Aboriginal woman, and same with my grandparents. So it was always something that I was interested in. And when I got older, too, like people would call me names, like, squaw, whatever. And it was like a racism that I didn't understand. So I thought, in order to understand this racism, let me just kind of investigate this a little bit more. And two, I've always been interested in people that have been on the fringes, whether the Holocaust, South Africa, our own Aboriginal people in the States, New Zealand, Australia. So it was always something that I had in my heart. When my mère passed away, she started coming to me in dreams, and she would take me to these various places in this dream. So I've always been weird, and I know I've always been weird, and I've always had weird things happen to me, and very spiritual things, and mediumship, and all of this kind of stuff. So I don't mind. I don't care whether I'm judged or not. It doesn't bother me in the least bit. It was hard being a nurse and being like this, but now I'm just a regular person, so it's okay. So my memory, as I was saying, my memory kept on bringing me to these various places, and I'm thinking, oh, gee whiz, I don't know where these places are. And she said, investigate your past, investigate your family history. Come on, go do it. It's important. And then another woman started coming in to my dreams. Her name was Maddie Ann. And so I thought, okay, yes, all right. And then the three women that I always felt around me, they were Aboriginal women. So there's an older woman. There's also two younger women. There's also a man that his name um, is Buffalo Grass, and he's a short little fellow that has this buffalo headdress on, who's some kind of a spiritual leader anyway. So it's just thought, okay, I've people are ganging up on me. I'll just do a little bit more investigation, and sure enough, I found some Marianne. Her name's Marianne Mascus, and again, I decided that I would do more investigation. So the first time I read about residential schools was the Carlisle Indian School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I looked it up because I couldn't remember when it was established. So it was established in 1879 in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It ran until 1918, and children from all over the United States, Aboriginal children, were taken from their communities, from the reservations, and put into this residential school. To me, it wasn't assimilation into white culture. It was the annihilation of Aboriginal culture. So John A. Macdonald heard about the Carlisle Indian School and said, wow, that sounds like a really good idea. I'll send somebody down to investigate. So this guy went down, investigated, and said, well, the thing is, we can do this up here in Canada. We can have the Canadian government be the directors, establish all of these residential schools, but it's going to cost a lot of money to establish these residential schools. The religious communities are really eager to get their foot in the door, so we'll let the religious communities establish and run these residential schools. So the residential schools were established, And you had different areas, had different, like you had the Roman Catholics, you had the Protestant schools, whatever community, I guess, whatever they were delegated by the government to where they could establish their schools. And so residential schools were born in Canada. Now, became illegal for children to go to any other school, Aboriginal children to go to any other school. They had to go to residential schools. And if you didn't send your 4-year-old child to residential school, then the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, would come into your community, take your child. You could not do anything. The law was not on your side as a parent. So can you imagine police coming in to your home, taking your child, taking them to this place that you had no idea where they went? You being a 4-year-old child, not being ripped away from your family, from your culture, from your language, brought to a residential school. If your siblings were there, if you had a brother and you're a girl, the brother was in a different part of the residential school. You weren't going to keep siblings together because, God forbid, if they talk in their native language, you just beat the hell out of them. Excuse me. You'd beat them. So you'd get your hair cut, you'd get your clothes taken away, and the abuse that went on in residential schools. Later on, they did experiments, and the government did experiments in regards to nutrition and sugar and sweets, and then just some horrible, horrible abuse. I can't imagine laying there because you wouldn't be able to fall asleep because you would know somebody would be coming in to abuse you, to sexually abuse you. So you would be laying there waiting for that person to come. Or if you knew that you had to go to somebody's classroom, that you knew what was going to happen to you when you went into that classroom, and you would try your hardest not to go into that classroom alone with somebody, whether it was priests, nun, teachers, whatever, whoever had the sociopathic I can't even, I just can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine what it was like. I know what abuse is like. So you have these poor little kids in these residential schools that they would be starved, punishment, they would be beaten. They'd go back to their communities. They don't understand the culture that they were ripped from. You know, they've lost a lot of their language. Like, how can you feel inside as a child that here you're speaking a language that is deemed horrible? Like, being Indian is not good. It's not good to be an Indian. You want to be anything but an Indian. You don't conform into the white society. You don't conform into your own society and culture. So you're separate. You don't belong anywhere. So how can you as a human being fit in? You can't. So I think as you grow older, you tend to self-medicate because you don't belong anywhere. And to having to deal with abuse and having to deal with PTSD, it is extremely difficult. Like, I didn't know about PTSD until I went to California and I lived near a Marine base, and one of the ladies that I worked with, her husband had done 2 tours in Vietnam, and he slept with a gun under his pillow. And then I understood, okay, this is PTSD. And I started reading more and more articles about people that had returned from Vietnam. One of the books that I read was Home Before Morning, and it was about a nurse who had been in Vietnam. And it's an excellent, excellent book about PTSD and trying to go back to live as a normal person, but you can't. There's all that normalcy has been taken away from you due to abuse or the circumstances that you lived in the past. So these children, it affected their lives so much. And how can you grow into a healthy adult if you have been terrorized and abused? There's no way you can grow into a healthy adult. So as adults grew into parents, how can you parent when you don't know how, when you've never parented before? You had no parents, really. You were in an institution. How can you learn about love and caring in an institution that's full of abuse? You can't. So I don't know if anybody remembers the 60s scoop. I remember the 60s scoop. I remember kind of reading the paper and seeing foster kids up for adoption. A lot of these children were Aboriginal children. So thousands of Aboriginal children were taken from their communities, from foster care, and placed into non-Aboriginal communities to be adopted. White communities, UK, wherever anybody, Europe, anybody who wanted a kid. Here, you can have one of our, like cast-offs. Yeah, don't worry. They'll grow into so-called white people. They're apples, but hey, red on the outside, white on the inside. And to me, I just can't understand that. Now, at least with foster care, you can be fostered within your community, but it's still not the perfect solution. Still, there's an awful lot of racism in Canada in regards to Aboriginal people and communities. I remember hearing people saying, "Oh, drunken Indian, Indians are no good, Indian time." It's like, so you don't fit into white culture, so what? I don't fit into my white culture, so what? But, not everybody is strong. Not everybody can survive. And so I've written down some things that, one thing is that with this being a horrible Canada Day, is that maybe some people will see this video and they will listen to this video and they'll do more research. There are some really good articles. There's the Indigenous Foundations Arts, ubc.ca, and they have some really good information on residential schools. They also have Residential Schools Survivor Society, and anything that, I've been very, very fortunate in my life that I've had Aboriginal people pass through and tell me, or not even just Aboriginal people, people that have survived the Holocaust, people that have suffered. And I consider myself very, very blessed to have met these people, because they have touched my heart so much and make me realize how much suffering there is in the world, and just to kind of pray for these people and for these poor little children that are in residential school, and being that little 4-year-old child being abused. So please, do some reading, do some research. If you have the chance to talk to somebody that has been in a residential school or had any kind of suffering due to racism, listen to them. Anyway, it's sad Canada Day. I'm going to say bye and take care.